What's up, Cannabis family? It's Sunday, the end of a really long week. And this is Cannabis Saves the World.
Why don't you get wise, get up and get out. Get rid of that frown that's been dragging you down and get up in the air. Just pretend that you can fly.
What's up, Cannabis family? It's Sunday, the end of a really long week. And this is Cannabis Saves the World.
Be able and strong. Give vent to that intent you've had pent up for so long. Come on up and see what it's like being out where you're free. Just do something that's real unique. Do something that's new.
That's right. Do something that's new. What's up, everybody? Happy Sunday. It's a little after 4 o'clock here on the West Coast. And everybody's starting to jump into the chat. MDM Niles, first in. Abolish the police. First comment. Certainly defund them.
I'm down with abolishing them.
Yeah, I mean that'd be good. Remember, that's what they're gonna. Apparently, that's what they're gonna do in Minneapolis.
Yes.
Breaking news out of Minneapolis this morning. Today, the city council is going to start from square one and eliminate they're going to try to eliminate the police department and invest in the community policing. Mm-hmm. Didn't get all the details of the story, but that's sort of what we're talking about when we go to protests here in LA and say defund the LAPD. We're not just talking about $150 million out of their $1.8 billion budget, plus another $100 million from other services. We're talking about major reform. 54% of LA's budget goes to the LAPD. And they should not be burdened with many of the things they were burdened upon with, especially treating protesters with SWAT teams.
There's that.
Which is really startling graphic video from ABC News got from someone in LAPD just swinging that baton. It's just like they were in New York.
There's an online database of images of police brutality through these protests that my friend just posted. I didn't get a chance to look at it, but I'm excited to be able to have an online database of police showing us exactly why we're protesting. It's kind of amazing.
Isn't it ironic?
They would try to control themselves.
You'd think, but it's hard. It's hard. They're trained this way. They're literally trained to kneel on the neck of insurgents and rebels, and this is how we're being treated. This is how we get treated because of the way they're trained. Literally, city police chiefs and and as a matter of fact, there was a story this week that I tweeted out on DC 420 LA at Twitter. They talked about how the 100 Minnesota cops from this police department trained with Israel on how to basically kneel on the necks of people to subdue them.
Wow.
And that happens all across the country. Every city, every state sends their cops for training to basically treat their citizens like insurgents, like they're in an open air prison. Like they have to or do in Israel. So,
that's how Israel treats Palestine, like they're in an open air prison.
Right. Yeah, that's my point.
Yeah.
And
just to be clear,
the town now, looks like town squares all across the country have become these open air, areas where the brutality has just been opened up. It's like Pandora's box has been opened up on folks. And it's been a real, we're talking about this because this was our week, really. We participated in one protest this week that within our schedule. And it's a protest that we've...
You sound so elitist.
Well, no, I mean, no, I'm a schedule. No, I mean, no, our schedule. No, I mean, like, helping our friend move out of her house to Texas,
we have
wrap
some
that up.
deadlines that are happening.
Yeah, we've got some things that we have to take care of within a short period of time.
The protest we went to be fair, was, I feel like, one of the ones that really matters.
Well, and it's one that we go to on occasion. That it's like our sort of, it happened because it's been going on for 2.5 years.
It's a regularly
so it's a
scheduled
regular protest. So it's and it was participated in by close to 7,000 or 8,000 people. Yeah, I mean I don't know if it got up to 10, but boy, it sure looked like it. Sure felt like it.
The energy was amazing.
And there were 3 groups that organized that one, different areas around downtown. It seemed like, and they all coalesced.
Was specifically to get Jackie Lacey, our district attorney, to resign. Mm-hmm. She needs to go because in her 7-year tenure, she has not prosecuted a single killer cop, even though she's had 600 plus opportunities. More than 600 people have been murdered by LAPD in 7 years, and not a single one has been prosecuted. And I have a friend who works in the district attorney's office, and she says, oh, but it's really hard to prosecute police. Well, you know what? Then Jackie Lacey should have been saying that. She should have been vocal. She should have been outspoken about the problems that exist within the system, but she was not. Jackie Lacey must go. It's an elected position. She has to resign. She can't be fired.
She does have a challenger in November.
He's terrible.
He's not that much better, no.
No, he's not much better. Now, maybe after all these protests and stuff, he might be different, but he's not ideal.
Well, we are seeing attempts throughout the country of what I would call incremental attempts of change. The 2 knuckleheads that pushed the old man in Buffalo have been brought up on charges.
You mean the known agitator?
Yeah, the known agitator.
A peace activist who's 75 years old and obviously to me, he was obviously frail. He was tall, he was walking, but he was, very slender and
brittle bones.
Old.
Yes.
Really. And in his left hand, he was carrying a police SWAT helmet. And he walked up to the police line to return the helmet, it looked like, and he was pushed to the ground by 2 officers, and one went to go help him back up again, and the supervisor told him not to, pushed him away to not do that. There's a lot of pushing going on in Buffalo. Then the police in Buffalo lied and said that the old man tripped.
Well, he tripped all right as soon as the bully pushed him back 10 feet and he lost his balance.
Well, yeah, he was pushed.
Yeah, exactly.
So that really infuriated me, and I posted that in one of my in real life friends who is ignorant, called him a known agitator. And these are some really remarkable times, Well, the videos of the out-of-control cops are just omnipresent online. And some people are just completely still clueless about... Oh, no, she believes police need reform.
What we've done to enable this. We've enabled this. The Democrats have enabled this. The Republicans have enabled this since the 80s. Every administration has increased budgets, for militarization of police. Obama cracked down on the Standing Rock protesters, on Occupy protesters. Ferguson cracked down. All of anytime BLM after a killing got in the streets, the police were brutal. We're seeing this week a real sort of a transformation in these protests. Not really a transformation. I think initially the early protests were being majorly taken advantage of by organized crime elements and a lot of white kids, quite frankly, causing chaos around the country. Most of the looting, if you look at the videos, it's a lot of
uneducated and untrained, and people with privilege running around just expressing their anger. Now, those white kids, some of them may have been well-meaning, and they may mean to end racism, but they're not trained. They have not experienced what it's like to walk in the shoes of others who have experienced struggle. And like that known agitator, 75-year-old dude, Martin Gugino is his name.
Now a YouTube star.
And he has a YouTube channel, Martin Gugino. Go check him out. Anyway, Martin Gugino walked right up to those cops. He's a tall white guy with a lot of privilege, even though he's a known agitator. He just walked up with no fear to those cops and was pushed right down.
Well, it did. It looked like he was going to return the helmet, and then he made some kind of a gesture to the baton when he had his phone. He probably something like, "Hey, boys, you don't need that here," or something like that. And then the knucklehead just like, "Get out of the way, dude." And they, of course, immediately said, "We're under orders. We were ordered to clear the square." I agree with Tony Gies on Periscope. Thanks for joining in. BLM Pride Ally, fuck 12. Which is, of course, fuck DEA. Cops need to be abolished. We need a new paradigm. We need a new system from the ground up. Agreed completely. Minneapolis City Council apparently is going to try to do that. So that is certainly some reform that we will keep an eye on. LAPD, I don't know. Garcetti is pretty much not in control of what's going on. In New York, they said, well, everybody's been good, so we're going to lift the curfew. The curfew was lifted in Los Angeles, not by the good graces of the mayor and the police, chief of police.
Which is definitely what they were implying.
Which is definitely what the news is implying all across the media. It was a lawsuit by BLM and ACLU that said this curfew is nuts. This is ridiculous. You can't do this. So, and the point I was trying to make, this evolution, it looks like the real bad rioters and looters, except for a handful maybe, sort of took advantage of the first couple of nights. The cops ignored them because, of course, we had to protect from the protesters. We had to be over there. So they ignored the rioters. They enjoy that because that helps them. Oh, look, we can get martial law and there's video of police in cities placing bricks, smashing windows, destroying police cars, undercover guys doing nefarious things to instigate things, obviously police. And that's being picked up all over video and spread around. So they want the chaos. They want that. It allows them to become stronger, become more money, become more. The first question after Garcetti offered $150 million to cut out of the LAPD budget, which is just completely mind-boggling. They said, "Well, how can you? What's going on in the streets right now?" The first question: "What's going on in the streets? How can you talk about cutting the funding of the LAPD?" Hello, this is what the problem is. Okay, you're not seeing the big picture. They are big police departments and some small police departments are out of control all across the country. They've been militarized. They've been trained to do this. They've been trained to pacify, to control. This Macarena with the army has got to stop. Okay.
Don't dance with your oppressors.
Do not dance or kneel with your oppressors. It's all an attempt to pacify you and say everything's okay. We're going to be good boys now. That's a technique that the military uses with the kids in occupied cities, towns across the Middle East. They teach them the Macarena. I kid you not. So this is all population control. They are starting to pull those guys back. The mayor of DC kicked the National Guard out. The generals are having a conniption over the thought of somebody being ordered into the streets. While they have done it before, I don't think this is going to be apropos a time to do it.
It's weird hoping for a military coup.
It's strange, isn't it?
But all of this is related to our specific little niche show, because cannabis, as a lot of the people in the chat and people watch our show know, was made illegal because of racism. To entrench that hatred, because in the 60s when Nixon made cannabis illegal and put it on the Schedule 1 of drugs, or created the Schedule 1 of drugs, they couldn't make it illegal to be black or to be protesting the war, so they made cannabis illegal. And there's some people who don't know that.
It's amazing, really.
Yeah, there's some people who don't know that. So
they're almost, it's like, and they're all aware of the disparity in the criminal justice system and the war on drugs to some level, but its racist connections are, I guess you can cause that a victim's, a result of white privilege education, which, it's, I don't know who it was that said it. Somebody this week, there was a great video of an older scholar, woman who was like, if you are educated in the United States, it's a miracle you are not a racist. Because of the education system
Right.
is completely geared
Yeah.
towards, the white people are the best in the world.
Yeah.
And
Our textbooks
yeah,
don't say what really happened.
yeah. So, he's like, if you're not a racist in America, it's a miracle. And certainly the police departments were an offshoot of racist, of slavery, of
Yeah.
chasing down escaped slaves, and then enforcing Jim Crow era laws. And so it does need to be completely torn
It's
down.
all related.
It all needs. The Minneapolis is great. Get rid of them. Get
And-
rid of everybody. Disband the entire thing and put the money into community policing. 30 days without cops in Minneapolis probably be the safest and
Well, it's not like they're going to
30
wave their
month of
magic
their
wand
time.
and they're going to be disbanded. I'm sure there's going to be a process and all that stuff. But racism, institutional racism, structural racism is not just about the police and not just about the criminal justice system.
That's true.
It's about health care. It's about access to quality food. It's about access to cannabis. So racism really is throughout every system we have in our society. And if you don't see it, if you haven't figured that out, if you don't know where that is, really start to look inside yourself. Really start to look at systems, because, there are food deserts in mostly black and brown neighborhoods where you can't get fresh food. So there are lots of things going into the structural racism that these protests are trying to get broken down. Now, some people might think that gets accomplished through rioting, and that doesn't. It doesn't. We need to be organized like we are in the streets. But I am not really one to tell people how to protest.
Well, one way is to spark up. It is 420, everybody.
It is 420.
If you're so inclined, please do so. What are we smoking today, guys? We have some 1-to-1 in our bag. We're
Yes,
going to fill
we are
up.
1-to-1.
We've been doing a little less combusting in the sense of trying to stay healthy, but we do love our tinctures. We do love our Airizer EQ vaporizer, which is a wonderfully healthy way to, if you're going to consume cannabis. We are having some network issues, so I apologize if we're dropping out or buffering in our stream. It must be why our upload of our video is having
Oh, I
some
was going to
problems.
say, is that ready?
It's not.
Oh, my goodness.
It's not.
Maybe we won't be showing it today.
Well, we could get into the news and then
Yeah, maybe it'll be ready
play
after
it
the
afterwards, because it is what's exciting. We could play the podcast, but that misses out on the great video that we created or did with our interview. This is our first podcast interview with video.
I see.
And that's the video that didn't get uploaded in time, and it's having issues.
Okay, well, why
So,
don't you do your news, and if it isn't uploaded, maybe you could just play the podcast.
well,
skip the
that we
video.
could do, yeah, and then
Okay, cool.
I'll upload the video. We could do that anyway, and I can upload the video later.
Whatever you want to do, babe.
What do you think of that?
Whatever.
All right, well, let's get into a little bit of news, since we're talking about the protests that have been going on all across the country. Chela's been tapping into some amazing live Facebook streams from Sacramento. The peaceful and organization and peaceful protests that are going on in Sacramento are quite remarkable.
Really.
Everywhere, really.
Portland.
Hollywood.
Right Now. My personal page, you'll see Hollywood Right Now.
Yeah, there's a lot of Facebook streamers out there that are going live and bringing what the mainstream media certainly isn't, although they're trying on some level to communicate how peaceful the protesters are. But there is this convolution of the peaceful protests and the knuckleheads that are causing,
Looting.
breaking stuff up and looting, and outright organized crime that's being on a lot of these cannabis dispensaries that are being hit all across the country, and particularly in Massachusetts this week. Black owned, and $100,000 of cannabis basically stolen from their property. There's been an effort to try to, tell people who are the black-owned businesses, cannabis businesses in the cities that where uprisings are happening, where protests are happening. It doesn't seem to be really necessarily helping, because that's not what's going on. What's going on is organized crime. A lot of these places are being held up by gunpoint, and those guys completely took advantage of what was going on in the streets. So, you have a lot of cannabis owners, dispensary owners, prominent ones, influencers saying, listen, that's going to be replaced. This is about more than just the stuff that's in my dispensary. But it ain't easy for cannabis entrepreneurs, particularly ones of color, and it's the access to capital required to get into the cannabis business is, quite frankly, prohibitive. Yes, yeah. And another example of exploitation of people of color and victims of the war on drugs. And corporate cannabis. The perfect example is John Boehner getting involved in cannabis business early on. Someone who's gladly locking people up in cahoots with Joe Biden, locking people up for cannabis. And sort of the top headline story for this week, the Pot Network, potnetwork.com, an editorial by Brandon Dorfman, who is a lawyer.
I believe so.
I believe he's a cannabis attorney, or an attorney. I believe we met him at a cannabis event at one point. Why calling for cannabis legalization as a tool for racial justice falls flat in an industry where white privilege prevails, and why more has to be done. So we have essentially, to get into cannabis business is about a $250,000 investment if you want to do a dispensary. That's what statistics say. And who's got that money? Particularly when some states are saying, well, you can't get into the cannabis industry if you have been convicted of a drug crime. How can you get into you've been locking people up for marijuana for 100 years, 50 years. That's why they should be able to have licenses. Who has access to money?
And work in the space.
Right. Yeah, you're not even allowed to work in the space.
To work in the space, dude.
The getting federal loans. You can't get a federal loan because cannabis is a Schedule 1. So you can only get private equity investments. Where does that come from? So the cannabis industry is lily white. There are, very few exceptions. Wanda James is one that comes to mind in Colorado, that is, an activist and involved politically to try to change this and get more people of color and black people involved in cannabis business. And that's what these social equity plans were supposed to be about. Well, guess what happened in LA, folks? The social equity money in Los Angeles went to LAPD overtime. $10 million from the budget. It was like, well, we need it over here now. You're not ready with your social equity program? We're gonna give it to the cops. Overtime. They need to pay for their overtime. Okay. So we have a cannabis business that was slow to respond in the early days of these actions, and now is opining like crazy all over the place about social justice and legalization. But look at what, legalization has essentially created a whole nother division in white privilege versus people of color and people who have suffered under the drug war. So the drug war needs to end, because guess what? People of color are always, one of the major reasons people are arrested is for cannabis use. 4 times more for black people is the statistic than white people, although we use cannabis as much, but it's been used traditionally to arrest black people. And, so legalization itself is not the answer. No. Is really what this article in Pot Network talks about. and that it's been a challenge since legalization to make sure that social equity and the victims of the drug war have been properly compensated, or have reached a point of being made whole. And it's a long way to go. We're not even close. What we have is another exploitation. We have another, on so many levels, what's going on with cannabis is great. We've been raised to essential in the COVID crisis. We've been, California is, because of the riots in the streets, they're like, well, we're taking all of the lists of all of the cannabis owners offline. Well, that was probably a good idea anyway, not to list the cannabis business online, all their addresses for somebody to get a hold of. And what else? Online, your drive-through now, Massachusetts has gone from closing down their cannabis stores to opening up their cannabis stores as an essential business, to making people allowed to drive up and get their cannabis, when everyone around the state was like, oh my God, we have to have such security for people to come in and get their cannabis. They have to show an ID. It has to be closed. It has to be this, it has to be that. Then now we're like, roll on up, guys, show your ID and you're good. You can get your cannabis. So I think a lot of these cannabis laws and rules that they've come up with are going to start to be rethought, and maybe we'll see some more change there. But we certainly have to stop arresting people for cannabis possession and use. That's anything cannabis related, quite frankly. Even Elon Musk got in the game this week and tweeted about how doesn't seem very logical that cannabis is being sold all over the country, yet people are still being locked up for it and in prison for it. Gee, you think? Thanks for sharing, Elon. Mars is going to really benefit from your presence. Can't wait till you're there. Congratulations, by the way, to SpaceX. That was actually pretty cool this week. Some level of good news this week. Good news. I mean, quite frankly, these protests are good news.
So good. It's such a great week. It's so powerful.
I said it's a long week at the beginning of the show. It's
I'm like, what do you mean? It's a great week.
And it is a great week. We've been doing a lot of stuff. There's a lot going on in the world. The whole world is out in force.
It's so great.
It is pretty remarkable to see what's coming in from around the world.
It's definitely everybody, it's all that pent up, I hate Trump, combined with 3 months of being home.
I don't have a job, or I can't get a hair. Well, the haircut protesters are staying home.
I don't have a job. I don't have an industry. 40 million people out of work. It's a combination of all the things.
Yeah.
And then George Floyd's murder was shot live, I guess.
Well, yeah, I don't know if it was actually live, but it was definitely put up quickly.
So it was kind of amazing. Kind of amazing. Yes, Jilly Love, it's true. The best news of the day is the Minneapolis City Council announced they are disbanding the police department, which is very exciting. It is the power of the people, Jilly Love. It is.
That is pretty remarkable. And actually, the story came out of...
Everyone needs to do it.
The appeal.
That was the first one. That was the first one that broke it. And then ACLU tweeted it, and now it's all over. It's everywhere right now.
Yeah, it just happened today.
Yeah.
Reading from this story by Jay Willis, the appeal. Minneapolis City Council members announce intent to disband the police department, invest in proven community-led public safety. The move follows the police killing of George Floyd and more than a week of uprisings where hundreds of thousands of people around the world have protested against police violence and abusive police responses to the protests. On Sunday afternoon, a veto-proof majority of Minneapolis City Council members will announce their commitment to disbanding the city's embattled police department, which has endured relentless criticism in the wake of the police killing of George Floyd, an unarmed black man, on May 25th. We're here because we hear you, quoting. We are here today because George Floyd was killed by the Minneapolis police. We are here because here in Minneapolis and the cities across the United States, it is clear that our existing system of policing and public safety is not keeping our community safe, unquote. That was the Minneapolis City Council President, Lisa Bender. Our efforts at incremental reform have failed, period. Exactly. And this is when we were having our family Zoom meeting. Well, what do we do? What do we do? What do we do? This is what we do. And it's going to be a very interesting, there's been, was it Richmond or was it Redlands or one of those towns was doing some major reforms, but I mean, no real major reforms like this have ever been considered. Minneapolis is not a small city, really. I mean, compared to LA, right? But proven community-led public safety. And that will be a great experiment if that actually happens in Minneapolis, and I sure hope it does. And I hope that Mayor Garcetti and other mayors, Democratic mayors, let's be clear, a lot of this is being pushed by Democratic mayors and governors, as well as Republican. But the Democrats are. We
live in the bluest of blue. And Los Angeles PD is one of the cruelest of cruel.
Ooh, that's good. It's true. We consent. You get a consent decree. You get a consent decree.
Over.
You get a consent decree. There's been consent decrees passed out around the country. LA was under a consent decree for years. For years. And they basically just learned how to turn off their body cams.
Good thing we all have cameras.
What's up, Techno Biscuit? Welcome. Hello, everybody. Yes,
Hey,
we did start at 4:00 today. We're going to start rolling at 4. We're changing the whole vibe. We're changing the whole vibe of the show. I'm still staying cool. We were told we were cool today while we were recording a new podcast. So that's cool. You guys are cool. So still trying to stay cool, but hey, Ugly Adams is there. We got, I'm sure Debbie D is close. MDM Niles, Vegan Metro, always in the house. Great to see you, brother. The public should also get to look back into police complaints. We should be able to bring charges for things still inside the statute of limitations. There are so many favorable rules for the police. They can get their story straight for 3 days before they have to say anything.
Insane.
No other suspect is given that right. Somebody tweeted today, police unions are like regular unions, except that when a steelworker knocks an old guy down and cracks his head open, he gets arrested and prosecuted, whereas a police officer doesn't. So yeah, they have a lot of privileges, additional privileges, these police unions do in protecting the thin blue line or whatever. Have you seen this ridiculous flag that's going around? The black American flag with the blue line through it. It's supposed to represent. Anyway.
What did you call it?
What's it? It's the thin blue line. What?
Oh, okay.
The flag. No, there's this flag going. There's this flag being sold around. Pro police group guy. They've made this
pro police
flag
they don't
with
know
this
what the fuck they're talking about.
Black and white with the blue, because the thin blue line flag traditionally is across the I guess is what I hear in Europe and whatever. It's a black flag with a blue line through it, and they're like separating the good people from the bad people. And some clown has made an American flag like that with the black and white field in the back with a blue line across the middle, saying, "Oh, the good people are black and white are above here, and all the bad people black and white." It's
goodness gracious.
It's more propaganda to basically keep us in line. So don't do the Macarena, don't kneel, and make sure that the city police are reformed like they're doing in Minneapolis. That's really the only answer. Continuing our welcomes, Jilly Love, we know, is in the house. Welcome, Jilly Love. Trump and Biden are both white supremacists. Yeah, they are. There's not a white supremacist among any president, to be frankly.
The choices, I don't understand.
Even even Obama to some extent. I mean, you look at the guys who were standing.
Biden wrote the crime bill.
Yeah, Biden wrote the crime bill. I mean, but look at the guys who are standing around this guy kneeling on his neck, killing this man.
Yeah.
There's an Asian American. There's a black, mixed race American. The cops in Atlanta, the ones that were arrested for their nonsense, they're on video abuse. Half of them were African American, were black police. So there is that. Jackie Lacey is African American woman. Yes. She doesn't prosecute killer cops.
Never.
Never.
They're too cozy with the cops.
This is a institutional
problem.
Problem.
Yeah.
And
I'm sure she's a lovely person.
we say there are no good cops because the good cops either quit or they're fired and they lose their pension, which is what happened in Minneapolis in 2014. A woman cop busted an officer that was doing, I think it might have been a chokehold, and turned him in, stopped him. She got fired and lost her pension. So, who should get fired and lost his pension? The guy that killed Trayvon Martin before he got to that police department, because he was at another police department and he was fired from it because of his abuse, and then he got a job, and then he killed Trayvon Martin. So, we need that national database, which is stopped by the police unions. We need to go back, like Vegan Metro says, and prosecute these guys. 600 of them would be nice in LAPD. That would be a good start. Let's start prosecuting some of these things that are going on in LA. That would be a move that would help. That's where, the only reason those 4 guys got arrested as opposed to the one guy is people who are in the streets. The only reason we're seeing Minneapolis do what they're doing is because of people in the streets. And anybody who thinks that this wouldn't have happened under Hillary Clinton is delusional. Completely delusional. Obama unleashed the police on protesters everywhere, on Occupy, on Standing Rock, all of the plethora of recent police killings and deaths were all under Obama.
Cannabis Sativa.
Ferguson, everything. Go ahead.
Cannabis Sativa said Obama busted no cops during his
None.
presidency.
You're
Said
right.
it twice.
So, and Jackie Lacey's been there for 7 years under a Democratic mayor.
Well, we were watching 5-year-old daily shows with Jon Stewart, and it could have been last night.
No problem.
With different names.
Yep.
I mean, I'm really, really, really inspired by everyone showing up in the street right now. Thank God there's 40 million people out of work, or else it would have been a blip. And none of this would happen. Yeah,
what did you say? The best thing they could do is just open up sporting events again, all events, so people would get out of the streets and just go back to going to sporting events?
If the government wants the protests to stop, they will have to open up sporting events, all events, music events, restaurants, shops, and make life like normal, except they can't. Because for the last 3 months, they've been scaring the shit out of everybody over coronavirus. So, it's the best pandemic ever.
What's coronavirus?
Yeah, I'm so happy. No, it's a real thing.
No, I mean,
they can't open up because of it.
It's dropped.
And that's why they can't stop us from being in the street, because there's no place to dilute us to. It's fantastic.
Right. So they can't pull back their charade and get people out of the streets by getting them back to work and back into the sporting events because of COVID. And they are trying to immediately. They're going to say, we're already seeing a rise in COVID cases. You've already seen a rise because of the reopening in many states, and if that's the case, and I'm gonna venture. I'm just gonna make an uneducated guess, because of course we're not experts. I'm just gonna make a guess that we're not gonna see a significant bump. You may see a bump, but I don't think you're gonna see a significant bump in 2 weeks.
For
because
coronavirus?
of the protests. I don't
they're
think
outdoors,
so.
and the virus is mutating to be gentler, so it doesn't kill the host.
Did you hear that?
Isn't that what you read?
Yeah. Apparently in Italy, there's scientists are saying that the mutations that are happening are making the virus less harmful and less lethal, and because that's what viruses do. They adapt to survive. They don't want your host to die. They want to keep your host alive. So it's supposedly, one of the theories is it's actually adapting downward, and that they're still going to try to give you an experimental vaccine that's ready in 4 months.
Nope.
Before you can go back. Everybody's like, my God, everybody has literally been brainwashed by Bill Gates or whoever that nothing can happen nothing can go back to normal until we get a vaccine. We don't have a flu vaccine that works. We don't have any vaccine that works on a virus. What are you, nuts? This is ridiculous. We may end up on a ridge sooner rather than later if they try to vaccinate everybody before
Yeah,
you
Julie
can do
Love
anything.
just said, work at home, barter, garden.
Exactly. And there's another best pandemic ever hashtag. People are gardening. We have a farm in our front yard now. I kid you not. There's literally a dozen different plants that are growing already.
They're not ours.
Or not ours, but everybody's starting to garden. Everybody's eating at home. They're making home food, blah, 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 because they can't go to their restaurant or they don't want the freaking takeout anymore or the line at Starbucks is too long. Plus, you've got workers at McDonald's that are saying, fuck this. I'm out. I'm not going to.
Not just there, but care homes, which is where our bailiwick is. It's like, oh shit, care homes we're in a caregiver crisis to begin with.
Oh yeah.
Now they're like, I'm not doing that.
You've got caregivers making minimum wage, having to work 3 or 4 jobs, coming in, being exposed to many, many people. This is why we had the explosion in the care homes, is because of, quite frankly, no living wage, no Medicare for all, because they don't have health care. A lot of these, it's California. I think it might be an exception because, so many people, you got to provide health care if you work so many hours. But many places you don't get health care in a care home if you're a worker. So there are many issues that are indicative of what's going on in our care system that are literally all point back to racism, poverty, the drug war, and it's all intertwined and it's all connected and it's all part of this system that needs to be broken down, needs to be eliminated and rebuilt from the ground up. Retriever Darcy 33 over there on DLive. Thanks for joining in on DLive. We are multi-streaming on Facebook. Welcome, Elisa. Your sister is on Facebook.
Wow,
I don't know if you noticed.
Lisa. I said hi, Lisa,
she dropped
earlier.
in and put a note in. We're on Facebook. We're on Periscope. We're on Twitch. And we are
Heidi,
on
too.
DLive and Facebook. Retriever Darcy 33 says, cops have been militarized and or been trained by Israeli forces. Absolutely. For years, they've been trained by Israeli forces and militarized since Reagan in the 80s. Used to be just surplus material. Now they get the brand new stuff, designed for them and developed for them. And that just kept growing and growing, even more as much under Obama than any previous presidency. And a lot of these tools that the neo-fascist in office, the clown dictator that is using and threatening to use around this country have been set up by the Democrats and their collaborators in the Republican Party. And I'll say that's the way it is. I mean, Joe Biden was, when he was in Congress, when he was a senator, he was more right-wing than the Republicans because they felt they had to be that way. Clinton felt he had to be that way. It was called triangulation. And so, somebody tweeted today, oh, the Republicans are now, the Democrats are now the Republicans because Colin Powell is voting for Biden. All of these prominent Republicans are trying to figure out George Bush. All these guys are like, I'm not going to vote for Trump. How am I going to vote? How am I going to ease into telling people I'm going to vote for Biden? So all the normal, nice Republicans, war criminals, are going to vote for Joe Biden.
Yeah, like W. Who endorsed Biden.
Yeah, who, Michelle loved W. I mean, they're buddy-buddy.
That regular mainstream Democrats don't see this. It's Emperor Wears No Clothes stuff. I just don't get it. I don't get it. Hey, has our video uploaded? Are we going to do that?
It's uploading. Okay. It's uploaded, but now it's processing. So we're close. We're close.
So you have more news to talk about?
I do have more news that we can just kind of go through.
Good.
There's a story over on RT. Decades of America's drug wars led up to the riots of today, by the author of several books on the war on drugs, including Dope World, and also it's appeared in Vice. References several of the most recent cop killings, and says the war on drugs is the greatest cause of racial profiling and police brutality in the United States. More Black American men are now behind bars on probation or on parole than were enslaved in 1850. A bigger percentage are imprisoned than South Africa in the final days of apartheid. Why? Why do we think that would be? Well, we know why. Nixon was part of the problem. What did we heard some quotes from Dan Adams was on a podcast. He writes for the Boston Globe talking about what's his name? The drug czar. Starts with an A. The name slips me.
Oh, Anslinger.
Anslinger. Thank you very much. Anslinger, the way he spoke about marijuana and the black people in America. Leave it blank. Yes. Oh, that's you. Yes,
That's me.
Thanks.
Leave it blank. Thank
I agree.
you. Leave it blank.
I agree. Retriever Darcy on DLive. Republicans turn Democratic. Well, that would be interesting. I'd love to see some of these patriots not bringing out their AKs, trying to threaten these protesters, but perhaps maybe out there in front, not with their guns, but using their white privilege, their white guns, in front of the police to stop them from beating innocent protesters that many of them went to war, allegedly, to protect the right to do. So where are the patriots standing in front of these lines that are being at the stroke of some arbitrary number of 1, 3, 4, 6 o'clock p.m. Before they start beating people? So I'd like to see that. I did see a number of, I think it was in Atlanta, there was some armed Black Panthers that were leading a march. I believe it was in Atlanta, obviously in an open carry state. I think Georgia's open carry, right? But they were, Benjamin Dixon talks about that. What happens when all of the black people with guns get in the streets?
That'd be so great.
And start walking around like
so
the guys
good.
did in Michigan.
That's what we need.
I think so.
Need.
I think so.
Mm-hmm.
I think, there needs to be some, there needs to be some patriots that are standing up. I mean, the military gets in the street. I think you're going to see a whole new group of people.
I don't think the military is going to get in the street. I think that if it comes to that there will be a military coup. The military will refuse to go into the street.
Mattis is not our friend. He really isn't.
I still think that, anyway.
Mattis is not the friend of people. So marijuana legalization op-eds have been all over the place. Normal did an op-ed in Marijuana Moment. Actually, they probably put it out on a number of places. But we know what that is a sticky wicket. Marijuana legalization. There needs to be more. Turns out Mr. Floyd was not killed by drugs. And I'm sure they would have said it if they were. It would have been all over. But the autopsy report, whose death by Minnesota police sparked widespread protests, found evidence that Floyd consumed fentanyl and methamphetamine sometime prior, but those details are irrelevant. What is relevant is the cops that killed him. He did not have a lethal dose of anything in him. What he had a lethal dose was police brutality. That was what he had a lethal dose of. Trying to survive on the streets. Here's a uplifting story, Chela. You're going to appreciate this one because this is about research. There's a new article and from Dr. Amanda Reiman. Dr. Reiman, might be Reiman, digs deeply into 5 questions about the endocannabinoid system. And that's in Forbes. Writer is Warren Bobrow, and it's a good read. Talks about the ECS. Not many people know about it. And we try. We try to make sure people learn, and doctors in particular, begin to learn about the endocannabinoid system. And did you know that you could have a deficiency, Chela, in your endocannabinoid system?
Really?
Yes.
Yes, I did.
That could be causing many, many problems.
Yes, like migraines. And IBS. Because it affects your brain and it affects your belly. So cannabis can help.
There is a gut microbiome connection with cannabis. It is true.
There's a gut microbiome connection.
Literally.
And cannabis helps both.
Yes.
Yeah. Pretty great.
So good article in Forbes this week. Mary Jane lets us know that research is still happening around the world. COVID-19 be damned. 6 clinical cannabis trials have been shut down thanks to COVID, but another 179 are still going on around the world. Not specifically for COVID, but we are researching all that ever needed research. More research on cannabis continues, at least around the world, not in the United States. But maybe someday that will change. Here's another study. This is Normal reporting on this. Inhaled cannabis provides temporary relief of post-traumatic stress symptoms. That is good news and something we sort of knew and had heard about before. But here's another study. And guess what, Chela? This actually is a team of investigators affiliated with Washington State University and the University of Pennsylvania, Perelman School of Medicine. So they must have gotten some of that crappy Mississippi weed and given it a shot.
You know, that crappy Mississippi weed might be just fine for a lot of people.
Well, whatever they had, it turns out on average, the respondents, according to this article, quote, reported a 62% reduction in the severity of intrusive thoughts, a 51% reduction in flashbacks, and a 67% reduction in irritability, and a 57% reduction in the severity of anxiety from before to after inhaling cannabis. So for acute PTSD relief, we have science.
Science. There's lots of science, just a lot of people don't like the sources of the science.
This is true. Here's somebody that likes sources of science. Travel legend Rick Steves.
Rick Steves.
A little lighter side. Always a cannabis proponent because he goes around the world and sees how undangerous it is. Says prohibition is racist and smoking marijuana is a civil liberty. We agree. David Downs, writing over there in Leafly, interviewing the travel guru and cannabis advocate. Back to studies. Little slip into the other plant world, or shall we say the fungal world. Psychologists just identified some wild new descriptors for psychedelic experiences, Chela. Did you know?
I did.
That
I knew.
Hallucinations and synesthesia. What is synesthesia? We know that word. That's where you don't recognize yourself? Is that
No.
synesthesia? No.
Go ahead. Keep
Anyway.
going. I'll get you the definition.
Hallucinations and synesthesia are generally recognized psychedelic experiences, but a UK psychologist suggests there are other trippy descriptions for what people feel: spiritual possession, alien abduction, interdimensional perceptions, and even telepathy.
It's when you see smells.
Oh, that's what it is. Okay.
Or when you hear colors.
Or when you hear colors. Right,
Yeah.
right. That's what it is. Okay. I thought it was a dementia-related thing.
No.
Yeah, when you see smells, right? Right. And if you do, and DMT, I hear you do.
hear
You do
colors.
see you do talk to entities. There's a lot of research into the connection between the entities people see. Let's see. Retrieve it. In Spain, it is legal to grow your own plants. You're allowed 3. Oh, that's fantastic. Did not know that.
My dad could move to Spain.
Yeah. He also, Retriever Darcy says George Floyd is a psyop, in my opinion. They needed something to keep people in fear and terror. Well, they certainly, the man was killed. The man was videotaped killed by murderous police. Is that crisis being used by powers? Of course. Never let a good crisis go
to waste.
as the World Economic Forum's motto goes. And you're certainly seeing that happen in the COVID crisis. And you are certainly going to see this happen in the police brutality crisis, the police brutality pandemic that we are under in this country.
Real pandemic.
Affecting many people of color, like COVID, more so than affluent white people, because of many reasons. Structural racism, boom. Is the government and will the fascists use this to push more security, more martial law type of laws, more intrusion on freedoms, more tracking, more labeling of non-group groups as terrorist organizations, all that kind of stuff? Yes, I definitely believe it's going on. And listen, plandemic, strangely, there's like positive information coming out now about hydrochloroquine, which is sort of just kind of weird. But hey, listen, I am all for a good conspiracy theory, and you will never let me not believe that the government will take advantage and lie to you. And there have been many psyops over the years. So who knows what is being really foisted on us in this strange time. I'll tell you what, though, they do want to keep us fearful. I'll agree with you there. They want to keep you in fear, and that makes you
compliant.
Compliant. That's right. So yes, I will agree with you with that. Illuminati affluenza kills, indeed.
We must kill HR 6666. It's true.
6666?
Sativa, you're right. Yeah, 6666. Terrible.
They added another 6. I thought it was just
terrible.
666.
No. 6666.
Is that a
It's a real
national bill?
House resolution. Yes. HR 6666.
What does that one do?
It's terrible. It's gonna do exactly what you just said.
Oh, well then, yeah, we should definitely kill it.
Yeah.
Getting into the states before our video is processed. I think it's getting processed.
Oh, God.
Vermont Senate votes to double amount of marijuana that can be possessed and grown without jail time.
Right.
So that's some progress in Vermont. While the state legalized possession of up to 1 ounce and cultivation of 2 plants in 2018, possession of a second ounce or third or fourth plant is currently considered a misdemeanor. The expungement bill, which cleared the chamber in a voice vote, was amended to add language making it so possessing up to 2 ounces or growing that third or fourth plant would be treated as a civil infraction, punishable by a $100 fine. Okay, Vermont.
Just quit it.
Just let's be clear. You didn't legalize anything. You were so smug when you did your first ever legalization through the legislature. You were so smug. This is not legalization.
No, it's trash.
You've got limits and you've got controls. It ain't legal. Sorry.
It's tyranny.
I tell you who wants some legalization is 65% of Arizona residents support new weed legalization proposal. So what they're coming up with in Arizona, they seem to be happy with. And that will pop maybe this year. We might see a few legalization things come through in November. Because I have a feeling some people are going to be coming out to vote against Donald Trump. I don't know. I don't know why I think that, but I think that's going to be the case. The only reason Biden will win is if Trump loses. That's all it is. And I mentioned this. California looting spurs regulators to remove online cannabis licensing info. That's probably a good idea. If you won't let them put their money in their bank, their cash, and you make them use cash and not credit cards, yeah, probably a good idea not to have their addresses on the website. Good job. Louisiana okays medical marijuana reform, but minimal market boost is seen. So we have some reforms. It was pretty crappy down there in Louisiana. It hasn't gotten much better. But the new bills, plural, which are expected to be signed by the Democratic governor, John Bell Edwards, allows physicians to decide whether to recommend medical marijuana to patients. Currently, 1 of 14 qualifying conditions have to be met. It will prohibit the state from discouraging or penalizing a state-chartered bank or credit union from providing financial services to a legal cannabis-related business. Minor, incremental, but welcome reforms to a crappy medical marijuana program. In Virginia, statistics on their side looks like, according to normal, marijuana arrests decline year over year in Virginia, down 18% from 2018 to 2019. But every study shows, from FBI to independent studies, the disparity and who's getting arrested has not changed. In fact, it's increased. In many states where it's legal, African Americans in California and Latinos in California are still harassed and arrested for public consumption and infractions like that. You know, add that to the social distancing laws that they're enforcing in these populations as well, disproportionately,
Totally.
of course. So, major reform, disband the police. Community policing. It works. Look into it. So good news, Virginia. Stop arresting people. How about everybody just stops arresting people for possession and using cannabis? How about that? Chela,
Yes.
look what picked up. Everybody picked up on this story. Oi. Cannabis used in Israel, an ancient site. And, you know, there was a lot of argument. There's been a lot of argument. Was cannabis actually something that was used in ancient biblical times. It's in the Bible. Something's in the Bible. It's a reed. It's mistranslation. It's not cannabis. Nah. Burning bush? Nope. That's not that. Nope. They weren't getting high. This was just incense. It was just, that's all it was. Turns out they were getting high. This was picked up. I think it came across the AP first, but all the cannabis media everybody picked up on this. Study identifies likely cannabis use at ancient Israel site. And just the pop out of this quote by T.G. Brandfault over at Ganjapreneur, writing, researchers have identified a material found on altars at the entrance of an ancient Judahite shrine as cannabis. Experts say the cannabis was likely used for its mind-altering effects.
You think?
Quote, as the terpenoids detected are not unique to cannabis and may be found abundantly in many other local plants, it is likely that the cannabis burnt on the altar was not imported for its smell or therapeutic virtues, but for its mildly mind-altering abilities, expressed only by heating. Quote, that's a quote from Cannabis and Frankincense at the Judahite Shrine of Arad, May 28th, 2020. I don't know. The spelling is weird. I'm sure I'm pronouncing that completely wrong. Maybe they've just spelled it the American way. I wouldn't have been able to pronounce it.
I'm sure.
Because, I was educated by the LA Department of Education. Cannabis does not alter your mind. It does temporarily. I think it does temporarily. As Snoop Dogg would say, it doesn't help me escape from life. It helps me enjoy life even better. Enhances perception. Yeah, sure does. As does mushrooms. Agreed. So, and also globally, Chela, and we don't know if it's going to happen in December because of COVID, but it is possible that they are going to reclassify cannabis globally in December. That's when they're supposed to do it.
Whatever. I've heard it before. I'm not getting excited about it.
They keep
they
threatening.
Fucking keep kicking that can down the road. I'm just going to keep using it and tell everybody about it.
And barring, of course, COVID issues, CanMed 2020 is still scheduled to go on in September. They are selling tickets, and the schedule has been announced. Super exciting. All of our Beyoncés are there.
All of our
Beyoncés are there. Ethan Russo, MD, interviewed on podcast episode 1. He will be giving the keynote presentation, Cannabis and Psychiatry, The Final Frontier. On day 2, Bonnie Goldstein, who we are hopefully going to have on the podcast soon. She'll be doing a keynote for cannabis medicine for children on Tuesday. And also on Tuesday will be a presentation by the awesome subject of our podcast this week, ELOISE THEISEN, RN, nurse practitioner and co-founder of Radical Health and president of the American Cannabis Nurses Association. And she will be giving a presentation at CanMed. So exciting this year. Cannabis use for symptom management in dementia, Alzheimer's patients. Case reports from assisted living communities. So really exciting, Chela, isn't it?
Really exciting.
That is happening at CanMed this week. And we had the opportunity to speak with ELOISE THEISEN. And guess what, Chela? Mm-hmm. It's been processed.
Woo! Awesome,
it's been processed. And that news that CanMed this week is going on segues us perfectly into going into our latest episode of Cannabis Helps Dementia podcast. You want to give us a little, sort of just a little setup of what this week's episode was all about and who ELOISE THEISEN is?
Sure. ELOISE THEISEN is a geriatric nurse practitioner. I really love nurse practitioners in general. I think that they are really special. And ELOISE THEISEN is a geriatric nurse practitioner. So she specializes in older people. And she gave a wonderful presentation last year at CanMed, which is how we connected with her. And yeah, I guess let's just get into it.
Sure. Before we do, I just want to wrap up some of the chats from our conversation earlier, because We've got some new folks and old folks that are joining in. Blaster Master is here.
Long-time folks.
Long-time folks, not old folks. Long-time viewers, OG viewers, if you will.
A dingo.
A dingo ate my baby is in there. And he said there was a fourth wise man who was bringing cannabis to baby Jesus, but he lost track of time and stopped to eat a lot and missed them in the manger. So he got distracted. The guy who was bringing the cannabis. It came later. Master Blaster is in there. Cannabis TV, of course, is here. Welcome, everybody. Thanks for joining the show today. It's been an amazing week in social justice, and the people in the streets have just been remarkable. We had a remarkable interview with ELOISE THEISEN, and we'll come back and talk about it after this latest episode. And this is exciting, Chela. This was our first episode we have video from. Well, that's not entirely true. We had video from the other episodes that we recorded for our documentary, but this was our first Zoom interview for our podcast, which is sort of the way we're moving forward at this time with COVID.
Super blurry.
So
right now.
What do you mean? On the video? Oh, it's because it's processing probably a little bit more.
Okay.
But the real video will be very crisp and clear, but you'll get an idea of what it's like anyway. So here goes. It's a podcast anyway, John. And you like blurry.
Okay,
it's
but
better.
I'm looking at the YouTube and it's completely out of focus. Like there's nothing in focus at all.
Well, let's see. Things could be better. I could have uploaded it an hour before too.
No, this is us right now, right here.
Oh,
Dude.
you mean our streaming?
Yes.
Our stream? Okay, well, you're competing. You're competing on a network that's challenged, so you're actually causing more of a problem. So
I have no doubt that I'm causing more of a problem. Why don't we play the episode?
It's Spectrum. I thought that's what you were referring to, was the
play
blurriness of the episode.
Shall we?
Sounds good. Here we
That'd
go.
be great.
All right.
Thanks.
Why don't you get wise, get up and get out, get rid of that frown that's been dragging you down, and get up in the air. Just pretend that you can fly. You'll never know if you can till you try.
Hi, and welcome to Cannabis Helps Dementia. I'm Chela.
I'm Dave, and right up front, we'd like to say that we're not doctors or medical professionals, and nothing you hear in this podcast should be considered medical advice.
Right.
We're not experts, but throughout this podcast series, you'll hear from doctors, nurses, research scientists, administrators, other caregivers, and people living with dementia about how cannabis helps.
Like it did for our family.
That's right.
After my mom was diagnosed with dementia, we were thrust into family caregiving and became fierce advocates for people living with dementia, which is how we connected with geriatric nurse practitioner ELOISE THEISEN, who is an expert. We heard ELOISE speak about cannabis and seniors at CanMed 2019, a huge, very serious medical cannabis conference where we also met Dr. Raphael Mechoulam, the godfather of modern cannabis research. Everyone who's anyone in the medical cannabis space was there.
ELOISE THEISEN is a board-certified adult geriatric nurse practitioner who has cultivated a wealth of knowledge and data for using cannabis to treat a broad range of conditions and diseases, especially those that commonly affect seniors. ELOISE is a co-founder and chief visionary officer of Radical Health, developing ongoing cannabis education for healthcare professionals and the community, as well as patient care and industry training.
Prior to Radical Health, ELOISE also founded Green Health Consultants, a medical cannabis clinic that helped patients use cannabis to treat chronic and age-related illness, and was one of the first healthcare practitioners to bring a clinical dosing regimen to the cannabis space. She's treated more than 5,500 patients using cannabis.
ELOISE previously served on the board of the American Cannabis Nurses Association and is now the president. She helped in the development of ACNA's first online core curriculum, providing over 8 hours of educational content, as well as continuing education credits for nurses. Her work has been featured in Newsweek and the San Francisco Chronicle, among many others.
There are very few healthcare practitioners in the U.S. with a comparable level of cannabis expertise and experience. ELOISE THEISEN, nurse practitioner, thank you so much for being here to talk about how cannabis helps dementia.
My pleasure. Thank you for having me. This is definitely a topic I'm passionate about as well.
Awesome. I'm so glad. So let's get right into it, shall we?
Sure.
How and why does cannabis help people living with dementia?
It's really interesting to look at the research that we have around dementia and traditional treatments, right? I think on a previous podcast, you had a physician who was talking about the fact that we don't have any FDA-approved pharmaceutical options for patients living with dementia. And often they develop some, neuropsychiatric symptoms that can be very distressing for the family and caregivers, whether they're living at home or a facility. And many of the drugs that are used are off-label. So it makes sense to look at cannabis as another treatment option. And unfortunately, we don't have large clinical trials to demonstrate whether or not cannabinoids are, if the evidence demonstrates they're effective for the use of, anxiety and psychosis kind of symptoms in dementia patients. However, we have quite a few clinicians out there who are using it. We do have some data on synthetic cannabinoids like dronabinol, THC, which has demonstrated that it can be very effective at reducing some of the symptoms associated with late-stage dementia.
How on earth can we overcome the persistent stigma that cannabis has, especially among seniors?
I think that's a great question. I was very fortunate in California to find some early adopters in the assisted living community and memory care community who saw my talk early on about cannabis, in terms of relieving symptoms, anxiety, chronic pain, insomnia. And they were really curious about how cannabis could help their residents. So they decided to partner with me early on back in 2016 and start offering cannabinoid treatment to their residents. And it was really a case-by-case basis. And so I think, once they started to see the results and realized that not only did it help relieve the dementia patient with their symptoms, but the caregiver, the family members, it was sort of this domino effect where everybody started to get some relief. And I think, unfortunately, sometimes that's the only way that people start to really believe in cannabis as a medicine, is they have this personal experience. And many of the seniors that I work with, the average age is about 76. So many of them actually did not use cannabis in their youth because at that age, they were raising families and having jobs. And so, they really do have that stigma deep inside of them. So we need early adopters. We need people who are willing to push the envelope and demonstrate that cannabis can be effective and just start to get the word out there like you guys are doing.
Can you talk about a couple of your patients? Give examples maybe of how you've found the right dosage, how you implemented cannabis for their symptoms of dementia, and what kind of dosing are you looking at as far as the patients? What are you finding?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. So we do have some dosing information around the synthetic cannabinoid dronabinol, where they did look at between 2.5 to 5 milligrams of THC in some of these patients and found that it was helpful at reducing their anxiety, improving their sleep, it improved their overall quality of life. Early on, there was a lot of exploration with my patients, and I started to adopt what I would call best practices, where I definitely noticed differences between genders, which I thought was really interesting. And one of my stories that I tell people is that early on, we do see more females than males tend to develop the disease of Alzheimer's. I do have a slightly larger female population, but it's probably 60-40 female to male. Early on, I was recommending CBD as a treatment for the anxiety in my dementia patients who were female. And I'll never forget this story. The daughter had durable power of healthcare, and she'd come in with her mom, and I said, okay, I want you to go to the dispensary and I want you to get this. And it was, CBD edible. It was from cannabis. It wasn't a hemp derived CBD product. And she goes to the dispensary, and the dispensary staff was like, no, you need a 1-to-1, really tried to talk this woman into something else. And, I got on the phone. I said, thank you very much. I'm confident in what I'm doing. And I'm going to go ahead and have her get her CBD. Well, lo and behold, she gets the CBD edible, and the facility administers it to her, and it makes her anxiety worse, to the point where she was screaming and yelling, and she had this worsening of symptoms.
Oh, no.
The facility wanted to throw her out as a result of it. It was so disruptive. And, the daughter was such a good sport. She called me up and she said, well, that didn't work. What do you think I should do? And I said, well, okay, go back to the dispensary and ask for some THC.
Try the one-to-one.
I decided to just try THC because I was concerned. We do see reports that CBD in very low doses can be stimulating.
Right.
And some people have reported, increase in anxiety with low doses of CBD. They've reported agitation, kind of feeling, like they're have too much caffeine. So I decided to try just THC, very low dose, 2 milligrams. The facility dispensed that to her, and within 2 days I got a call from the daughter. My mom is a completely different person. I can actually take her out now for meals and go out in public. She's calm, she's smiling, she's engaging in conversation. I mean, she wasn't, she didn't have this remarkable recovery from her dementia, but her quality of life was greatly improved.
Yeah.
And
On
then
just a couple of milligrams, even.
Just 2 milligrams.
How many times a day?
In this particular woman, it was twice a day, and sometimes it's once, sometimes it's 3 times a day.
Amazing.
It was really remarkable to see a dose low enough to not cause any adverse effects.
Yeah.
And just benefits. It was, and then I had a couple more women where CBD, sometimes the families would come to me and they say, well, we tried CBD and she seemed to be worse. So I started to see this pattern that, female dementia patients, CBD wasn't always the right place to start. So I typically do 2 milligrams of THC as a starting dose. And the frequency kind of depends on when their symptoms are the worst. Are they a typical sundowner? Does it get worse in the evening? Is it all day? And often we'll see, anywhere from 2 to 10 milligrams a day of THC is enough to manage.
Is that something you might consider? NIDA is asking for input as to what is the minimum or the starter dose for THC for seniors. Is that kind of where you would start? 2.5 milligrams and work your way up to 10?
Yeah, Dave, you'll notice my responses are usually, it depends.
It depends. All depends.
Seems like all the medical professionals, that's what they say.
Yep.
But that's with all drugs, right? That's all drugs.
Yeah. I think there's multiple factors to consider, when you're making a recommendation. And, I found sometimes half a milligram is, a good starting dose. I mean, seniors typically, as they age, their metabolism slows down, so less is more. They seem to tolerate it incredibly well at 2 milligrams and not seeing an increase in falls. I don't see any dizziness. I really don't see any overwhelming side effects that prevent them from continuing.
That's such a tiny little dose. How do you get accurate dosing with such a tiny amount?
So, I mean, we're fortunate in the state of California now to have testing standards that are some of the strictest in the nation. So I do look for products that are easy in the assisted living communities, they have to treat cannabis like a controlled substance. So if they get, a cannabis product, they have to be able to count, that if they administered 3 doses today, there's, 3 less than there was yesterday. So edibles are usually the easiest for them to dispense, and single piece edibles, so a 2 milligram edible, a 1 milligram edible. So, based on the fact that testing has to be within 10% of the label, I have confidence that at 2 milligrams, it's fairly accurate.
So like, I've seen products like mints that, or small chocolates that might be that low.
Yeah, I had chocolates, gummies, mints.
Cool.
I learned the hard way. It's something they have to be able to chew, because we've found that if they swallow it whole, it usually comes out whole on the other side.
Oh, okay.
These things that you learn through your clinical assessments.
Good to know.
Really important to know.
Doesn't always dissolve.
Doesn't always get broken down in the stomach.
Oh, that's awesome.
Yeah.
So what other ways does cannabis help older people in particular?
Well, I get to work with a lot of people who have, age-related and chronic illness that usually presents in ways of chronic pain, anxiety, depression, sometimes decrease in appetite, sleep issues. And I see over and over again that, cannabis helps a lot with sleep. I see that happen. Usually I tell people we can get your sleep under control relatively quickly. Chronic pain can sometimes be a little bit more complex because everybody's so different. And anxiety and depression, I do see great results, particularly with CBD and THC helping to control those symptoms. So they can reduce some of their pharmaceutical intake. So we see some reduction in the polypharmacy that many seniors experience. And sometimes that even improves their quality of life more because those drugs, of course, have side effects and compounding side effects. And so it's great to work with them and watch them experience, their life in a new way as they age.
Absolutely. Are you finding that with insomnia, it takes as little as, I know it depends, but it can be as little as 2 milligram dose to help people with insomnia, or do they need a much bigger dose?
With THC, yes, I've seen anywhere from 2 to 10 milligrams to be quite effective. I have seen some rebound insomnia with THC, where after time they find that after 5 hours they wake up almost like when the dose wears off. I found that CBD anywhere from 10 to 25 milligrams can be effective for sleep. So depending on their goals, and sometimes you'll do a combination of it for them. Interestingly enough, I read in an article that men have 41% more cannabinoid receptors than females. And how that correlates to what I see in clinical practice is that males tend to respond to cannabis much quicker than women. Just like they lose weight faster than women do, they tend to respond to cannabinoid therapy a little bit quicker.
You have so much specialized knowledge, especially for seniors. It's really not easy to find healthcare professionals with this kind of knowledge. Do you take telehealth patients? And do they have to be in California, or can they be anywhere in the world if you do?
Well, COVID has certainly changed a lot of that. I had a hybrid practice from the beginning where I did, video, phone, and in-person consultations. With COVID, everything is virtual now. And I do informational or educational consultations with people outside of California. I can't establish a clinician-patient relationship with them, but I can certainly teach them how to read a label, how to understand what they're looking for, what potential side effects they might have, and make sure to guide them, in the right direction, get on the right track as soon as they can.
That's super helpful, because otherwise it's literally trial and error, and you have to keep a notebook, and to have a healthcare professional is so helpful.
Yeah.
So
it really does improve their response time.
Absolutely. I mean, and I love that your specialty is our community, Tell us a little bit about your radical health community.
So we, my business partner, Timothy Byers, and I started Radical Health back in 2018, really in response to the healthcare professionals coming to me and saying, okay, I want to know what I want to pick your brain, the famous, I want to pick your brain.
Yeah.
And we thought, okay, maybe we should establish some education for them to help improve their knowledge base so that, we can start getting more clinicians out there to help care for our patients. So we've been developing curriculum for years, but really started officially in 2018. And the Radical community launched last year as a way to provide ongoing education outside of our modules. So we sort of have this foundational package and advanced science package for people who really want to geek out. And then monthly webinars looking at different topics, like we did COVID last month. This month, we're going to do post-traumatic stress in response to COVID, because we do expect to see an increase in that diagnosis post-pandemic.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Awesome. And to join your Radical Health community, they just go to your website?
Yeah, so at radicalhealthcare.com, and we spell it RADICLE, different than the other Radical. And the monthly webinars are recorded, so if you can't make them live, they're on demand, and it's a whopping $9 a month to be a part of the community. And we also have a private Facebook forum where sometimes we'll do case studies and just kind of talk about what's going on in the community and try to engage maybe I'll present a very unique case and say, what would you guys do, to try to have that collaboration and input, and, really trying to help people feel more confident when they're out there in the community to provide that education that's so needed.
So needed. Yes.
Needed.
I mean, cannabis is not taught in any medical schools. Well, very few, like 9% or some ridiculously low number like that. And we all have an endocannabinoid system, and 30 some odd states have some sort of cannabis. So millions and millions of people are using cannabis, and healthcare professionals are, for the most part, not educated in this area. And that to me is criminal.
It's embarrassing. I think, part of the work that we're doing at the American Cannabis Nurses Association is, to provide legitimacy to cannabis nursing as a specialty. We're trying to go for credentialing so that, eventually nurses can be certified as a cannabis nurse.
Awesome.
And, we know that our patients are using it. The stigma goes so deep and so far. It's, when I first started doing this, people would call me a pothead and a drug dealer, and I would laugh and say, well, some of that's true.
Right.
At the time in particular, because there wasn't, it was like a bottle of olive oil infused with cannabis.
Hit me in the back parking lot, I'll get you something. And then the way that cannabis users are still portrayed in the media, I think doesn't help that stigma, especially for healthcare professionals, because they don't want to be the pot doc or the pot nurse.
Right.
And I've just really enjoyed sort of being on the forefront and pushing those boundaries. And because I'm confident in the science of, those cannabis medicine, and I feel like there's enough evidence there to support it, that if you're still arguing with me that cannabis isn't medicine, then you're just ignorant.
Well, it's essential under our pandemic in many states, and more delivery is being expanded because people need to get their medicine. This idea that, you're just making it medical so you can get your weed is being completely blown out of the water under this pandemic. And even the cannabis doctor professionals say, smoking probably not a good idea right now, but you can certainly vaporize. You can take it in many other forms. And if you're taking cannabis medicine for other things, you shouldn't stop taking that cannabis medicine. And so, I think this pandemic may lift cannabis up. I mean, there is research going on about the relationship between cannabis and CBD, and in Israel is looking at with using steroids along with CBD to help fight COVID. It's been looked at for cytokine regulation. So that people are pivoting and they're looking. So I find it very interesting that cannabis has risen to meet the moment, as many people say here in California, as far as this goes. The sales, Oklahoma last week, the medical cannabis sales in all of the states, people are either afraid they're not going to have their medicine or they have continued access to it. So in many ways, cannabis rises to the occasion for health and other reasons. And also recently, and I want to get your input on this before we let you go, is what is one more. Oh, you have one more question. Okay. Well, I want to get your input on this new research and thoughts, particularly from Dr. Ethan Russo. And there's an article from Project CBD today about the endocannabinoid deficiency as a cause of other diseases, as basically we have destroyed our endocannabinoid system. What are your thoughts on endocannabinoid deficiency syndrome?
Yeah, I think that's a great question. And just kind of going back to Chela earlier saying, we're not really teaching this in medical schools. I am teaching at Pacific College of Health and Sciences, which is an accredited college for acupuncturists and nurses. And they've developed the medical cannabis certificate program. So we had full registration this term. So we are starting to, have students come in and learn about cannabis. And their first week was on clinical endocannabinoid deficiency. And, basically they had to read about it. And then I gave them a case presentation and said, would you rule this patient in or out for clinical endocannabinoid deficiency? Because we can't test for it, but we can do clinical observations to, use it as a differential diagnosis. And
I was just thinking that. I was a big House fan. So yeah, that came up.
Yeah, and so I love when I find a patient that I think meets the criteria, because I talk to them about it. It increases their confidence in cannabis tremendously when you say, look, here's the research. We believe this, right now it's still a theory, but it's a working theory. And you really meet that criteria. And I think cannabis is going to be incredibly helpful for you. And I do see those that meet that criteria benefit from cannabis more than others may who don't meet that criteria.
Could you expand on what that criteria is? Because some of our listeners probably have no idea what we're talking about.
Yeah, so, Dr. Ethan Russo has theorized that all humans have a base endocannabinoid level, and that cannabinoid level can become dysfunctional through genetics. So you could, have a strong family history of it. It can be environmental. It could be from trauma. So I think like in some cases where people experience either a traumatic event like a car crash or, combat or something like that, it causes a disruption in their endocannabinoid levels. That's what we can't test for. I can't draw your blood and say, oh, you're dysfunctional in your endocannabinoid system. But often you'll see where they may have an autoimmune disease, they may have the strong family history of fibromyalgia or migraines or irritable bowel syndrome. And those are some of the things that you can look at to say, okay, like I worked with a woman a couple weeks ago whose mom had fibromyalgia, her sister had migraines, and she developed irritable bowel syndrome after a flu-like illness in 2018. To me, she met that criteria. And, it doesn't necessarily change the course of how I'm going to treat. There's nothing necessarily different that I'm going to do other than I'm going to say, I'm hoping that not only will this help your symptoms, but we might see some increased benefits when we get your endocannabinoid system back in balance.
Awesome. Yeah, I remarkably used to suffer from migraines, irritable bowel syndrome, and have a family history of autoimmune issues.
Wow.
Throughout my family. My mom had Alzheimer's disease and died of it, of course, My father's mother also had Alzheimer's disease.
Wow.
So yeah, my endocannabinoid system is something I like to keep in excellent balance, and I do that through all the ways that it's possible to do. I eat leafy greens, I exercise, I get quality sleep. I try to manage stress through all the different ways that's possible, and I also enjoy cannabis in multiple forms. After CanMed last year, I started plucking a little, I like a 1-to-1 balanced plant called the Harlequin Tsunami. And I take a little piece of that and I throw it in my tea in the morning, and I get my raw cannabinoids, well, raw-ish because it's in hot tea, but I would like more access to fresh cannabis.
Yeah.
I would love it in the grocery aisle, and next to the romaine, I would like my cannabis leaves.
Yeah, right. Yeah.
Wouldn't that be great?
It would be great.
You'd have to rub it like kale, though. It's a little tough.
I'm going to throw it in my smoothies or, and hemp microgreens. Oh, I want to do that so bad.
Hemp microgreens. Yeah, that's another thing.
I would love to see that. And I think you bring up some good points too, Chela, about how important it is to look at other options outside of cannabinoids to upregulate your endocannabinoid system. I think many people who come to me have, a friend or a colleague or a coworker or family member who's using cannabis, and they expect these immediate results. And it's often multidisciplinary. You need to be exercising, you need to be eating well, you need to be sleeping, you need to be managing your stress.
Yeah, it's all related. I mean, health is a complete picture. There's no silver bullet to good health. I've noticed, contrary to the Cheech and Chong type stereotypes, that all my friends who use cannabis are all really healthy people. They're very concerned about where their cannabis comes from, and that it's organic and pesticide free and all the good things, and that translates to the rest of the things that they put into their body.
Yeah.
So
right.
I think
mindfulness.
they're far more mindful. And the folks who are steeped in the 70 years of prohibitionist propaganda, I feel badly for them, and I'm trying to find different ways to break through that gaslighting.
Well, they also don't think sugar's bad for you, you know.
Exactly.
Right.
Well, it's all part of the same system.
Right.
Yeah.
Hey, would you mind giving us a little preview of what you're going to talk about at CanMed 2020?
Oh, I would love to. I'm really excited to present on, I have probably about 50 Alzheimer's patients that I've worked with specifically in the long-term care facilities, the assisted living communities. So I'm going to present that population, you know, and the data around that, you know, the specifics around gender and dosages and frequency and outcomes, you know, whether or not.
Any little tidbits you could share?
Yeah, I would say about 80%, you know, I mean, I'm going to finalize it, but I would say 80% of the time, and it might even be higher, we do see resolution of their symptoms, not just, you know, toning it down, but they're no longer anxious, they're sleeping, you know, just these really great outcomes for them at a very cost-effective approach. So I'll also talk about what kind of products seem to be effective and the average amount that they're spending. It's probably $40 to $75 a month that they're spending on their cannabis.
Wow. Do not tell the pharmaceutical company that.
And that's at overpriced, overtaxed dispensaries.
in California, right?
In California, where the patient has been, you know, messed with Prop 64. Wow. That's exciting. That's super exciting.
Yeah.
And
I really can't wait for you to make that presentation, because the last time they had an Alzheimer's panel, it was extremely well attended. People really want this information. So I'm so glad you're going to be able to give them real clinical information. I'm super excited for this.
Thank you. Yeah, I am too. And I'll tell you one other little thing I noticed is that a lot of the patients I'm working with had a very high level of education. So it's interesting to see how some of them were high functioning PhD prior to their retirement. You know, so what it means, I'm not sure yet, but they were definitely very high functioning, intelligent people before the onset of dementia.
Well, you know, with a lot of the pharmaceutical companies have given up on trying to find a drug that can help Alzheimer's. And I think it's super encouraging that, you know, this anecdotal, non-official trials and, you know, ways of proving this, at least to a certain degree, until they'll allow us to actually research it with descheduling and proper research to be done with real world medicine, not that stuff that you have to beg, borrow, and hope you get from Mississippi, which, you know, they continue to drag their feet on. But we need real research with real medicine like you're doing. And yeah, you know, our journey into this started at CanMed 2 years ago. And we went because of the Alzheimer's panel, because we knew it was working or it was helping, and we wanted to know more. And it was very research oriented and not a lot of real clinical data. And that came from the audience. That's where we met Dr. Hergenrather. He was in the audience saying, "Hey, I'm doing this right now in Santa Rosa, and it's working." So that's how we came to know doctors, real doctors and medical professionals and nurse practitioners that are actually, you know, when we found out there was a Cannabis Nurses Association, we were like, oh my God, there are cannabis nurses, because, you know, nurses are going to really know what's going on. And my sister is a nurse, you know, traditional nurse for her entire career, 50 years. And she listens to our podcast now, and she was very impressed with Dr. Hergenrather. So, you know, we need these avenues. We need ways to educate non-cannabis medical people entry into this, to learn about it. And it's really exciting that we get some good clinical evidence being presented at CanMed this year. So we hope it goes off. If not, I'm sure it'll be virtual.
Yeah, I'm on the planning team for the medical practicum, which is the pre-conference workshop, and they're so committed to making it happen. So virtual or in person, it will happen.
Awesome. Yeah, because this information really is necessary for the millions and millions of people who have no other options.
Yeah.
And with no end in sight. And nothing, you know, nothing the FDA is in, there's nothing in the pipeline. So, you know, we should be able to utilize this to help give relief to our loved ones and the caregivers
Yeah.
that are struggling with this. So
Yeah,
thank you
absolutely.
so much.
Thank
Yeah.
you.
Eloise, really, thank you so much for taking the time to talk
Oh,
with
my
us
pleasure.
about how cannabis helps dementia. You know, we really appreciate your advocacy and all that you do in the world to help older people, and especially with cannabis therapeutics. And
Yeah.
we'll make sure to have all the links to how to reach you and how to get
Thank
to
you.
Radical Health
Thank you.
and the American Cannabis Nurses Association as well.
Thank you. I hope, and thank you for the work that you're doing and helping get the word out there for this population that's so deserving of quality of life as they age. So thank you.
Cool, of course. Thank you.
Awesome.
Cool.
Thanks for joining us for Cannabis Helps Dementia. Be sure to download and like us on Spotify, iTunes, or your favorite podcasting network.
And please share this podcast with anyone you know in relationship with dementia. In episode 9, we meet Dr. Jordan Tischler, founder of Inhale MD in Boston, Massachusetts.
Dr. Tischler graduated from both Harvard College and Harvard Medical School. He trained and is faculty at the Brigham and Women's Hospital and Harvard Medical School.
He spent years working with veterans at the VA.
As a leading expert on cannabis therapeutics, Dr. Tischler employs Western medicine and cannabis care to treat a wide array of illnesses.
He's the president of the Association of Cannabis Specialists, which aims to educate clinicians, lawmakers, and the industry about best practices and needed tools for proper patient care. His father, a former physician himself, is living with dementia.
Do you want to tell your story of how cannabis helps dementia? Visit Anchor FM/Cannabis Helps Dementia to leave us a voice message or drop us a note and connect with us on the socials.
Check out the Society of Cannabis Clinicians website to find real medical professionals familiar with cannabis medicine in your area.
Because you remember, we're not doctors.
Just family caregivers turned advocates.
And don't forget, download, like, and share what you learn. Cannabis helps dementia.
Why don't you get wise? Get up and get out. Get rid of that frown that's been dragging you down and get up in the air. Just pretend that you can fly. You'll never know if you can till you try. So get out of your rut.
For so
Be able
long.
and strong. Give vent to that
see.
intent you've had pent up for so long. Come on up and see what it's like being out where you're free.
new.
Just do something that's real unique. Do something that's new.
And that was episode 8 of Cannabis Helps Dementia. Nurse practitioner Eloise THEISEN. You can download, listen, over, do whatever you want to do with that. Find all the places to listen over at Cannabis Helps Dementia on Anchor FM/Cannabis Helps Dementia. You can get to all your favorite podcast sites there. You can leave us a message if you've enjoyed the podcast, the episode. And if you've got a story to tell about how cannabis helps dementia, you can tell us about, give us a brief message there. Maybe we'll have you on the show and include it in the podcast. You can also support the podcast there directly through Anchor. You can also support the show here on YouTube now with Super Chats, which is kind of cool because they will demonetize it as soon as it goes to air because of what we're talking about. Because that's what YouTube does. It's hilarious. They'll let people do Super Chats, but won't let people advertise on it. Actually, I think it's just limited advertising. I think we get some advertising, but it's limited. But Eloise THEISEN, episode 8, amazing information, amazing interview. The Radical Health Community, RADICLE health.thinkific.com. That seems weird.
What's the matter?
I think there's a better website. I think that's weird.
What?
That doesn't seem
Radical Health? Radical Healthcare?
Is it radicalhealthcare.com?
Uh-huh.
Because this is...
Radical Healthcare.
Let's see if that works. I think that's them, though. Oh, no, that's not. Anyway, we will put the correct link. Is it in the description? Oh, well, because there's different Radical Health. Let me see. I just want to make sure I got the right one that comes up.
That
It is in the description.
That's right. That's her website, that one. With the R.
That was right, right?
Yes,
it just
that's
looks
correct.
it just looks weird on the
That's correct.
thing.
That's exactly right.
But that was the right one, right? Mm-hmm. Okay, cool. And can't wait for the presentation at CanMed 2020. It's going to be amazing. Cannabis used for symptom management in dementia Alzheimer's patients, case reports. And we got a little tidbit. 80% 80% or more beneficial. Eliminating symptoms. They're no longer sleepless. They're no longer anxious. With 2.5 milligrams a dose. Do you know how incredibly low that is? That's remarkable.
It's really low. Everybody in the chat knows how low that is. I'm sure everybody in the chat is going, no way.
Yeah.
That's not possible.
Turns out less is more, particularly in this population. Slower metabolism, any number of factors that are...
Well, a lot of people are cannabis naive. A lot of older people have a really slow metabolism and are cannabis naive.
And everybody's different, so your dose is different necessarily.
Yeah.
But they are. It sure seems like over the few podcasts we've done now, working on we recorded number 11 today. But the information we're getting is that it's the low dose is where it's at. I kind of lost my train of thought where I was going, but I think that's what I was focusing on.
That's it.
That was the low
dose,
right?
The low dose is the
everybody is saying it. Everybody, Dr. Tischler, next week we talk to him. He's talking about lower doses. Today we talked to Kelly, and that's going to be an amazing episode. We've got some amazing episodes coming up already in the can. Dr. Sherry Afai is going to be after Dr. Tischler. So it just keeps coming. Cannabis Helps Dementia podcast. Go on over to anchor.fm/Cannabis Helps Dementia. Find where you want to listen to it. It's on Spotify. We're on iTunes. We're on, what else are we on? We're on Breaker. We're on Castbox. We're on iHeartRadio. We're pretty much everywhere. If you put in Cannabis Helps Dementia on your podcast app, you will find us. And if you don't, let us know. We'll get our feed over there. But we're on most of them now, Chela. So
cool.
Wherever you listen, go listen to episode 8, download, like, share, rate and review. We really want to that's really what we want, is get this information out. It's so powerful. It's so important. And the tsunami of Alzheimer's is not going to stop.
No.
Despite COVID, COVID's not going to stop it. COVID's not going to, revolution in the streets are not going to stop Alzheimer's. So we're going to need to have some relief from anxiety, which is what we talk about a lot next week, is how cannabis is an amazing tool for anxiety. Dr. Tischler talks about that. So do what you do on the podcast. Looking forward to CanMed 2020. Thanks so much to nurse practitioner ELOISE THEISEN for joining us on this week's podcast. And we thank you guys for joining us for this week's Cannabis Saves the World episode. We talk about the news of the day regarding cannabis and social justice in the streets, and police reform, police defunding. Reform is a term that doesn't seem to work.
We've tried and tried and tried.
We, consent decree after consent decree after consent decree in cities all around the country. And yet we see what we see on the streets of these cities that have been under consent decree for years, like Los Angeles. No prosecuted cops. Jackie Lacey must go. She must resign, be forced to resign, or be voted out in November.
At the very latest, but that's a disgrace. And
we will be at the Wednesday protest this week in front of the Hall of Justice, downtown LA, with our masks on. Everybody, that's one thing I noticed, Chela. Everybody had a mask on. Except
there was a big group with
there was actually a huge group of people without masks.
The violent people at these protests were not wearing masks. And there was a lot of them.
Not one.
Not a single one.
Not
no,
one.
No, that's not true. I think there were 2 of those violent people wearing masks. But everybody else, and there were a lot of them. There was a lot of those people.
Well, they certainly
in a big group wearing the same outfit.
They certainly looked like they could get violent at any moment.
They were wearing the same outfit.
We didn't see them get violent at this particular protest at the time we were there.
No,
because we left before curfew.
It ended.
But yes, the officers of the law were not wearing masks.
Cops and National Guard, none of them. Very few.
And this
very
is a
small percentage are wearing masks.
And on every news and every protest and every stream that I've caught live, every cop in every city is not wearing a mask. No, none of them are wearing masks. Why is that?
Almost like they're trying to hurt people.
Why is that? If it's a law, if you're trying to get social distancing, if you're going to go out in public, Garcetti, you said wear masks when you go to these protests and
That's
then
right.
get tested afterwards to see if you're sick. Why aren't these cops wearing masks?
Yeah, that's really weird. I mean, I know they're wearing 100 pounds worth of gear, but hey, on the Facebook chat, I just want to say, I want to mention a couple things.
Yes, please.
Rose C. La Chance, who I met through Facebook, the only good thing to come of Facebook. As a 25-year dementia care specialist, cannabis is the only thing that helps. And love. Thank you, Rose. And also, Kathy Jane Quinn, friend of the show.
Friend of the show.
Friend and loved one of the show.
Family of the show.
She's our family. She's also an RN.
Yes.
Informative interview, thanks.
Thank you, Kathy. Thanks
I know
for.
that you would love to hear from the nurses, especially.
I love that my sister listens to our podcast every
I
week
do
and our
too.
show every Sunday.
And I love that my sister is starting
Yes.
to really listen. Well, she shared it. I don't know if she's actually listening, but she shared
Hey,
it. So
she
that's
shared
awesome.
it. And we want you guys, if you guys share it, share the this YouTube video or Facebook or DLive or Twitch or wherever we're going out. We're going out on all the platforms we can to get the information out that cannabis helps dementia, that cannabis legalization is not necessarily the answer to the social justice ills of the drug war and the victims of the drug war and police brutality and police violence. It's being touted in all of these states, like, oh, well, part of our criminal justice platform is going to be legalization of cannabis. You can legalize it, but as long as there are restrictions and there are public nuisance laws or public consumption laws or these broken window type laws, police are going to exploit them, and people of color and black people are going to be persecuted and prosecuted 4 times more on average than white people. It's just going to happen. So unless you deschedule it and decriminalize it completely so that there are no arrests for possession, there are no arrests for public consumption, you literally shut that down, then legalization is not the answer. There needs to be decriminalization of every aspect of the plant along with your tax and regulate scheme. And this will help with illegal grows too, because if people can grow their own and share their cannabis with their friends, with their family, in their garden, and and then eventually it's at a farmer's market. You can have a delivery. You have alcohol delivery. It's regulated. You have cannabis deliveries now. Is Amazon ever going to deliver it? Is UPS ever going to deliver it? Like they do alcohol? They deliver alcohol in places. So it's time. It's time for a revolution for the reefer, and it's time for a revolution in ending police brutality, which is connected. It's very
absolutely connected,
very directly connected, directly connected, as written about a lot this week. So the people will stay in the streets. Today is no exception.
Nope. Hollywood now.
Hollywood is cranking
right now.
Chicago was going off earlier. Yesterday was remarkable in DC, in many other places. And politicians may posture. The Democrats may try to bamboozle you into thinking they're going to fix things, but they're not. When Trump loses, and he may lose, we need to stay in the streets. If police departments aren't reformed
until this is done
and defunded,
till it's done,
and incremental change is not going to do it.
No.
There needs to be pulse protests every week in every city, every day, somewhere.
Yep.
In a city.
Yep. We go to the Wednesday one in downtown LA to protest Jackie Lacey Must Go.
So find your protest.
Yours.
Find your protest.
You don't have to go out every day.
Pick
you don't have
one.
to be there all the time. You don't have to be rah, 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 rah. But find your lane.
And show up.
And do it. And be loud about it. And write to your legislators. Yeah, vote. All right. But write and call every day.
Do not be silent.
Voting is the tip of the iceberg. Do not be silent. Talk to your friends. Talk to your loved ones, even the ones who are difficult and hard to deal with.
Voting is the last thing. It's really the last thing.
Iceberg.
It's really. It's a given. It should be a given necessarily. But hey, I'm not ready to commit. I'm in the leave it blank on the top line camp right now.
No.
So Joe Biden has not earned my vote.
No. Nope. Thank you, Ugly Adams. Thank you, Jason Tube 22. Hi, Lithium 19. Thank you.
Ooh, Lithium
Hi.
19. Welcome.
And
welcome,
Gypsy Lady
everybody.
Lee, always good to have you.
Indeed, we are wrapping the show up, guys. Please feel free to rewind and watch from the beginning. You get to hear our news rant. You get to hear our entertaining exchanges, and you get to hear my dog coughing in the background. What's going on? What's going on, Jack? Time for a walk? It's time for a walk. Is it curfew? The curfews have been lifted. Surprise, surprise. Did you notice the police?
Because of lawsuits.
You know, the protesters, there was I think it was a sort of a look at all of the different media stories or something about the protests. And it only turns out there were violence from protesters after the cops got violent. And most of that had to do with enforcing bullshit curfews that they were basically allowed to unleash on by these mayors.
Gypsy Lady Lee says, it's like Denver cops are trying to behave, like they want to be peaceful with us now. I haven't seen how it's going downtown today, though. Do not dance with your oppressors, guys.
Do not do the Macarena with the National Guard or the Denver PD.
Do not. If they want to join us, they can take off their uniforms.
That's right. As Dave Chappelle says, there are no blue lives, only blue uniforms.
That's right.
You can take off a uniform.
Take off your uniform, join us, defund the police. Look at people's budgets. Check out what people are talking about when they're saying defund the police.
That's right.
Don't get all uppity and say, oh, well, what about rape and murder? Blah. No, there are answers. Look into what it means to defund the police and share with your neighbors and friends and loved ones, and let's get this party started. It's time.
You know, it has to start with a demilitarization. That's really it's one thing that
thank you,
needs to
Gypsy
happen.
Lady Lee just gave us $20.
Holy shit.
Thanks, lady. Thank you.
I'm sorry. Pardon
You're
my
too
French.
kind.
Gypsy Lady
Thank
Lee,
you very
mahalo
much.
for the super chat
Awesome.
with a little amazing emoji. Thank you. That's very cool of you. Mahalo. Well, you know, we last week we were sort of overwhelmed by everything that was going on emotionally and lots of other things going on. So we didn't really do a show. We just showed our last podcast, put that video up, which was the story of Evelyn, one of the our ongoing relationship with people with dementia and loved ones with dementia. Continues in 2020, and you can hear that little story, which is to give you a little spoiler alert. Evelyn is doing very well in Texas.
She is.
She is
with no cannabis, but she's doing well.
She has no cannabis, but she is. I think the fact that she is around people all the time, she feels safe because she was alone, and we weren't able to give her enough of that cannabis could overcome that anxiety, I think, especially in these times. It's a tool.
No, it's a tool. Exactly.
As we will hear in our upcoming episodes, 9 and 10 and 11, all of them. But you know, it's a tool in the toolbox. Do dementia patients suffering from psychotic breaks, from a deteriorating and dying brain, are they going to need some other type of medicine, pharmaceutical intervention? Yes, and in small doses, those things do help in some instances. Cannabis tends to help those work better and use less, which is what a lot of these practitioners and administrators and people who are using it are trying to educate people on, is that you can lower the polypharmacy, you can lower the amount of psychotropics by using cannabis and even just CBD as a base. And so super good information we've had collected so far in our journey of finding out that cannabis helps dementia, and more to come. We've been collecting some amazing new interviews. Next week's is great. The one we did today for episode 11 is just remarkable, about a new place, Kathy, you might be interested in checking out up in Petaluma, a couple of them, that has an amazing home care type settings that are remarkable, just remarkable. And we're going to hear about those in episode 11. So do that, downloading and subscribing to the podcast over on your favorite service. You can follow my news rants.
He has so many.
On the daily, on the hourly, all day long over at DC420LA on Twitter. That's where I tweet. You can also follow Cannabis Helps Dementia over there. We're Chela Hootsuites. Over to there, a new tool. We're having fun with developing our muscle on social media, where you can contact us at Instagram as well at Cannabis Helps Dementia, Facebook, Cannabis Helps Dementia at CHD Podcast. where you can watch, or where you're watching right now. I think we're live over there on the page. At least we were. I think we still are. Where Kathy's watching.
Yes, still on the page.
Very good.
Yeah,
Very good.
yeah. Kathy Petaluma. Yes.
Nice. Petaluma, yes.
Petaluma.
And over on Anchor FM, that's where the podcast is. Oh, you can visit us. Actually, we have the website up too, cannabishelpsdementia.com. His website, it just has links to all the podcast episodes on the different platforms, and we'll make that website a little more dynamic. There's a vocabulary, a glossary on the page, so folks who are cannabis naive might hear something in one of the podcasts that they don't really know what it is. And we got that suggestion from a family member, actually. It's like, well, what's a 1-to-1? What is a, so there's a glossary on the website at cannabishelpsdementia.com. You can want to learn some more. And we're going to make that, we'll probably be doing a blog on there and all of that. But
oh, God. Okay. Thank you so much for joining us today, guys.
Look, I'm just creating more work for Chela. Yes, thank you so much. We love you guys. We love you all. Thanks for watching. Stay safe. Wash your hands. And
eat well. Exercise.
Well,
all the things.
Fight the power.
And especially fight the power.
Fight the power.
That's the most important.
Free the plant. Free the people. Pot for peace, everybody.
Right on.
See you next week.
Take good care. Thank you.
Oh, I should play the song.
Oh my God, Hollywood is so beautiful right now.
Ah, it's amazing.
Holy shit.
Murderers keep murdering, the churches keep a-burning, the rapists keep a-raping, and the tide ain't turning. Uncle Sam, for all your power, things get worse every hour. It seems to me your energy's all wasted, chasing my friends and me. Uncle Sam, leave us pot smokers alone. Uncle Sam, leave us pot smokers alone. The terrorists keep terrorizing, our leaders keep a-lying, the haters keep a-hating, and the planet's dying. Uncle Sam, do what's proper. Call off your dogs and your helicopters. The problems of society were not caused by my friends and me. So hey, Uncle Sam, hey there, Uncle Sam, leave us pot smokers alone. Uncle Sam, leave us pot smokers alone. How many innocent people gonna be imprisoned? We just peace and love and street pop and brotherhood freaks. A touch of Mother Nature never made nobody violent, never made nobody hate, nobody will break nobody's peace. Since we've never been shown to be harmful, don't you tell me no lies with your caffeine, codeine, nicotine eyes. The cannabis ban is just recent, just since 1938 to re-legalize it, realize it. You made a big mistake.